Rain came down in solid sheets over the settlement, turning the hard-packed earth into a patchwork of muddy pools. The puddles reflected the low, unbroken ceiling of grey clouds, so that for a moment it felt as though the world had been turned upside down. And Lena Pharaoh was standing on the sky. She stood at the edge of the habitat dome, one hand resting on the cool curve of the transparent barrier. The storm drummed on the dome's surface, a constant, soothing roar. She could almost pretend this was home some forgotten rainy afternoon in a city park on Earth, where she might have gone running through grass instead of alien soil. Almost outside. The Corathi shelters huddled in a wide circle round the dome. Low, sturdy structures of woven plasteel and local stone, designed to shed wind and channel rare rainfall away from their entrances. Today, those channels overflowed. Water cascaded from the eaves, splashing into swollen ditches that fed the growing puddles. The Corathi themselves were nowhere to be seen. At the first scent of ozone on the wind, they had withdrawn into their shelters, as instinct dictated. The only signs of their presence were occasional muted rumbles of voices, and the faintest flicker of movement behind shuttered vents. 8 standard months, Lena thought, watching the rain. 8 months since her survey ship's drive core had gone from routine diagnostic to catastrophic failure in less than a minute. 8 months since she'd punched out in an escape pod, praying the coordinates she'd sent were clean enough for the rescue beacon to be found. 8 months since she'd crashed on Corathi Prime and learned that sometimes the universe answered you not with a rescue team, but with a pack. The Corathi had taken her in as if it were the most natural thing in the world. They'd shared their food-rich, savory stews simmered with herbs that stung her human nose but tasted like nothing she'd ever had before. They'd given her a corner in their main shelter, taught her the rhythms of their hunts, and the pattern of their stories. The pack was loud and affectionate and utterly unapologetic about either. But for all that closeness, there were still gaps. Things they didn't understand about humans. Things Lena still didn't understand about them. Like this. The Corathi were not cowards. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, all long, powerful limbs and graceful digitigrade stride, rippled across their frames in shades of grey and russet and deep charcoal, hiding retractable claws and layers of muscle. Their triangular ears tracked sound with uncanny precision. Their amber eyes could pick out movement at distances Lena's human vision could barely imagine. On their world, they were apex predators, and yet, when the clouds gathered and the rain began, they retreated. The first drops sent a visible tension through the pack. Ears dipped, tails lowered, conversations ended, doors closed. They didn't fear storms, not exactly, but rain matted their fur, dulled their heat-sensitive whiskers, blurred scents on the air. It turned their keenest advantages into liabilities, and reminded them that even apex predators could feel exposed. So, when storms came, they waited them out in silence. Lena missed the opposite. The freedom of running outside, shoes kicking up spray, hair plastered to her skull, laughing as lightning split the world wide open. She was just about to key the dome seal and step through. Propriety be damned when she realized she wasn't alone. A small shape crept toward the entrance, hugging the inner curve of the dome as if hoping it might blend into the structure. Riku, Lena thought, amused affection already rising. Riku was the youngest cub of the alpha pair, Torin and Missa, barely 3 seasons old. He was still compact by Corathi's standards, his silver grey fur untouched by the scars and shading that marked adulthood. Curiosity bristled off him as tangibly as static. His triangular ears flicked forward and back, tracking the sound of the rain. His tail swished in quick, uncertain arcs. His bright amber eyes were fixed on the falling water. "Riku," Lena called softly. He froze, then turned his head, ears perking towards her voice. She crouched to meet his gaze at eye level. His pupils widened when he realized who it was. "Lena, friend," he chirped in his reedy, high-pitched voice. His tail swished harder, betraying his excitement. "Why does water fall from sky? Is sky broken?" She couldn't help it. She laughed. They had starships, slipstream drives, and energy weapons that could slice through an asteroid. But no one had ever taught this kid what a thunderstorm really was. The Corathi homeworld had been terraformed generations ago to minimize rainfall and regulate climate. Their ancestors had decided storms were too dangerous, too disruptive. Now, on this new frontier colony, the weather controls were limited, still calibrating. Real storms rolled in from the distant ocean, raw and unapologetic. To Riku, this downpour was as alien as Lena had once been. "The sky isn't broken," she said gently. "It's sharing water with the ground. Every living world needs rain. It's how the lakes stay full and the plants stay green. It's a good thing." Riku pressed closer to the transparent barrier, staring up at the torrent. "But everyone hides," he pointed out. "We close shelters. We go quiet. That means danger. Rain is complicated," Lena admitted. "It can be dangerous. Floods, lightning, slippery ground. But it's also..." She groped for the right word, one that would make sense in Corathi. "It is joy as well. It can be very fun." His ears swiveled again. "Fun," he echoed, baffled. "Water that falls from sky is fun?" Something reckless sparked in her chest. She'd been walking carefully for months now, always aware she was the guest, the outsider, the fragile one, always respecting their customs, their limits. But this she could share. "Watch," Lena said. She palmed the dome's environmental seal. The barrier dilated with a soft hiss, and a wave of cold, damp air rolled in. Lena stepped through before she could talk herself out of it. The rain hit her like a wall. On Corathi Prime, storms came with a sharp chill that cut right through her thin settlement clothing. Within seconds, her hair was slicked to her cheeks, water streaming down the line of her spine. It was shockingly cold, shockingly real. It stole her breath and then gave it back. She threw her arms wide and tipped her head back, letting the rain run over her face. She closed her eyes and laughed, the sound swallowed and scattered by the drumming storm. Behind her came a startled yip. "Lena, friend, you are in danger." Riku's voice squeaked on the last word. "Water." Lena spun, grinning. The cub was plastered against the inside of the dome, nose smashed flat against the transparent surface, eyes so wide they were mostly pupils. "I'm fine," "Riku," she called above the rain. "Watch this." She jogged across the clearing, boots squelching in the softening ground, until she reached the largest puddle, a wide, shallow pool that had formed near the habitat's drainage slope. Mud swirled at the bottom, the surface dimpled and dancing under the onslaught of the rain. Lena took a running start and jumped, tucking her knees up at the last moment. She came down with both feet at once. Water exploded outward in a glorious, muddy arc, splattering her from knees to shoulders and sending ripples racing across the clearing. The sound, sharp, satisfying, absurdly loud, echoed between shelters and dome. Riku's jaw dropped. Lena could see his reflection in the puddle's trembling surface. The cub's expression a perfect mix of horror and wonder. "Come on," she called, splashing back to the edge. "It's called puddle splashing. It's a human tradition." He hesitated. Instinct warred visibly with curiosity. The rain was still a pounding curtain beyond the safety of the dome. Every drop seemed to carry a lifetime of ingrained caution. But Riku was young, and curiosity was the one instinct that sometimes outran fear. He darted through the open seal. The rain caught him immediately, flattening his fur and turning his silver coat a darker, sleeker gray. He flinched at the cold, a high whine caught in his throat. But he kept moving until he reached Lena's side. He shook himself once, sending a spray of droplets flying. "Feels strange," he said, voice trembling. "Cold claws, but..." His tail flicked tentatively. "Not bad. Not bad at all," Lena agreed. "Now watch closely," she pointed at the puddle. "You run like this." She demonstrated a few bounding human strides. "And then you jump with both feet together. Like this." She splashed again, sending another fan of water into the air. "And you try to make the biggest splash you can." Riku stared at the puddle as if it were an enemy he was deciding how best to tackle. His ears flattened in concentration. Then, with a sudden fierce resolve that was very Corathi, he backed up several paces, dropped onto all fours, and bolted forward at the edge of the puddle. He launched himself. His form was terrible, and his timing imperfect. But his enthusiasm was unmatched. He hit the water belly first with a resounding whump. Muddy water erupted around him in a wild cascade, drenching Lena, the ground, and Riku himself. He surfaced, sputtering, blinking water from his eyes, and then produced a sound Lena had never heard from a Corathi. It wasn't a hunting howl or a conversational rumble. It wasn't the low growl that signaled warning or the musical trills of pack affection. It was pure, ringing laughter. Again, Riku shouted, scrambling to his feet. Again, again. They fell into a rhythm. Lena demonstrated the running start, the knee bend, the last-second bounce that launched water higher. Riku mimicked her, adapting techniques to his four-legged stance, learning how to angle his body for maximum splash radius. He added his own variations: spin jumps, sideways leaps, full body flops that sent shockwaves through the puddles. Within minutes they were both soaked through, plastered with mud and grinning like fools. It took Lena longer than it should have to realize they had an audience. The clearing's edges, once empty, now held figures. Adult Corathi had emerged from their shelters, drawn by the noise. They stood just beyond the driving rain, watching in stunned silence. Riku's parents stood at the front. Torin, broad-shouldered and scarred, his fur a deep slate streaked with silver, looked every bit the alpha. Missa, sleek and sharp-eyed, stood at his side, one hand resting on his arm. Both had their ears raised high in alarm. "The cub," Torin rumbled, his voice cutting across the clearing like distant thunder. Lena froze mid-step, the weight of what she'd done crashing in at once. She'd pulled the alpha's youngest outside during a storm, and encouraged him to jump into hazardous pools of muddy water. Somewhere in every cross-cultural handbook ever written, there was probably a chapter titled "Don't Do Exactly This." I'm sorry, she started, rain-washing the words from her lips. "I didn't mean," but before she could finish, Riku bounded between them, trailing droplets. He skidded to a stop in front of his father, tail whipping high with unrestrained delight. "Father, father," he yipped, "the human taught me splashing. It is the best thing, watch." Without waiting for permission, he spun, charged back to the nearest puddle, and leapt with all 4 feet. The splash that followed was his best yet. A towering explosion of water that asked high enough to hit Torin squarely in the chest. The clearing went absolutely still. Water dripped from Torin's fur. His eyes narrowed to slits, fixed on the puddle, then on his son, then on Lena. Lena swallowed, every muscle tight. Then Torin's shoulders shook. What emerged from his chest wasn't a growl of anger, but a rolling, booming laugh. It started low, and then rose, rich and infectious, spilling out into the rain-heavy air. Lena recognized it from nights after successful hunts, from story circles that had gone particularly well. Mrs. Ears flicked, and then she began to laugh too, her lighter notes weaving through Torin's deep rumble. Like a dam breaking. The rest of the pack followed. Laughter rippled through the assembled Corathi, transforming their stiff postures into something looser, brighter. Ears relaxed, tails rose, voices mingled with the sound of the rain. "This is how humans celebrate storms?" Missa asked, stepping out into the rain with careful, measured steps. Water flattened the fur along her shoulders, but she didn't flinch. Her gaze on Lena was curious, not accusing. "Sometimes," Lena said, heart still pounding, "when I was a kid, my dad would take me outside whenever it rained. He said puddles were too good to waste." Torin looked from his son to Lena, then up at the sky. Rain ran in rivulets along the lines of his face. A slow, decidedly toothy grin spread across his muzzle. "Then perhaps," he said, "we have been wasting storms all this time." What happened next would become a story told and retold in the colony until the details blurred. At the edges, and only the heart of it remained, Torin was the first adult to jump. He stalked toward the nearest puddle with deliberate steps, every eye in the clearing on him. At the edge, he bent his knees, coiled his powerful legs, and launched himself into the air with a roar. He hit the water like a meteor. The resulting splash dwarfed anything Lena or Riku had managed. A massive sheet of muddy water that drenched everyone within several meters. Riku shrieked with delight. The watching Corathi howled with laughter. Missa followed, more graceful, but no less enthusiastic. her landing sending twin arcs of water spinning outward. Then came the other adults, some tentative, some launching themselves into the puddles as if reliving forgotten cubhood mischief. Soon, the entire settlement was in motion. They began inventing rules almost immediately. Splash contests emerged: highest spray, widest radius, best landing howl. Younglings formed teams, each claiming territory in the clearing and defending it with barrages of well-timed jumps. Someone started a rhythmic hunting chant, deep and steady, and others twisted the words into something new, a rain song. Celebrating the storm instead of surviving it, water flew in every direction. Grey and russet fur darkened to near black. The air filled with the scent of wet fur and churned soil, of laughter and song. Lena stood in the middle of the chaos, breathing hard, rain and tears indistinguishable on her face. She watched as an entire people, apex predators, cautious colonists, prideful hunters, discovered something small and utterly human: the joy of playing in the rain. Riku bounded over to her again, mud clinging in clumps to his fur, eyes bright enough to rival any star. "Lena, friend," he said, his voice suddenly very serious despite the happy panting. "This will be tradition now. When storms come, we splash." Lena swallowed past the tightness in her throat. "I think that's a wonderful tradition," she said. Torin approached them, his shadow falling over both human and cub. He looked at Lena with a thoughtful weight that made her stand straighter. "Humans are strange," he said. "You find joy in things we thought were only obstacles. You have taught us that storms are not only to be endured, but celebrated." He laid a massive paw gently on her shoulder. The contact was warm, grounding. "The pack will remember this," he declared, loud enough for all to hear. "We name this the First Storm Festival. Every storm that follows, we will splash in your honor." For a moment, Lena couldn't speak. She had spent months wondering if she was a burden, one more mouth to feed, one more fragile body to protect. She had worried that she would never truly belong to the pack that had saved her life. But here, in the middle of an alien storm, with rain falling and laughter rising, and a cub at her side declaring a new tradition, she realized she had given something back. Not technology, not tactics, not survival. Something simpler, something joyful. "Thank you," she whispered, unsure if she meant the words for Torin, for Riku, for the storm, or for the universe that had brought her here at all. The rain kept falling, but the settlement had changed. No longer a place that simply endured storms. It had become one that welcomed them. Storms would now mean puddle contests and howling songs, leaping alphas and laughing cubs. A festival born from a human memory of childhood and carried forward by Corathi feet. Pounding through muddy water at the center of it all, Riku jumped into another puddle with fearless abandon, sending up a wave that splashed her knees. He shook his head, droplets flying, and whooped with delight. Somewhere, Lena thought, her father would be laughing too. On Corathi Prime, under a grey sky shared by human and Corathi alike, a new tradition took root. It would outlast the rain. It would outlast the season. It would become part of who these people were. All because, on one stormy day, a human had stepped outside and showed a curious cub how to splash.